So thank you, as I say, for inviting me to deliver this to you. I first wrote this talk in 2010. And at the time, I was a lodge secretary, a provincial mentor, and I was also the provincial secretary for the Mark province of Derbyshire, where I live. I'd spent some years learning as much as I could about lodge management, lodge development, and what makes some lodges thrive while other ones fail. Now it's 10 years later, I've a lot more learning and experience under my belt, or at least I think so. And as I have, as Jeremy has said, visited lodges in every province and in a number of different districts overseas. So I've taken the opportunity to bring this talk up to date. What I plan to do in the talk is to share with you my personal observations and thoughts about the key qualities most commonly found in successful lodges, and indeed chapters and other Masonic units. Now, what do I mean by successful? Well, I mean strong, happy, healthy, and attractive lodges that have good prospects of continued viability. However, before I tell you my top 7 qualities for success, I'd like to give you just a little bit of context. The last lodge founded 100 years ago in 1920 was Purcell Lodge number 4236. The February 2020 report of the Board of General Purposes listed the most recent lodge to be granted a warrant as 9997, and we know there have been more since. So in the last 100 years, we've seen the establishment of over 5,700 lodges, and that's well over half the number of lodges ever founded. The number of working lodges at the end of 2019 was 7,175. So that's around twice as many as were working 100 years ago. So here comes the issue. It's a rhetorical question, this, brethren, so I'm not asking for a real answer. How many subscribing members do you think we have today compared to 100 years ago? The answer is, it's almost exactly the same. It's approximately, in fact, it's just below 200,000. Now, twice during the last 100 years, Freemasonry has experienced large growth in the number of members. And it was these increases that prompted the increase in the number of lodges. But membership has now fallen back to approximately the same level as 100 years ago. However, it's not been matched by a similar reduction in lodges. The result is that we have an average membership in our lodges of half of what it was in 1920. And in fact, today, the average membership of our lodges is 33 members. Now, without a strong pool of diverse members of varying ages and skills, lodges often struggle to find able and willing brethren to occupy the key offices that keep the lodge active and successful. And it doesn't take long for a once strong, healthy, and attractive lodge to begin a slide into difficulty. The first sign is often a drop in attendance, a noticeable absence of officers and other members, and a reduction in visitors. Unless early action is taken to arrest the slide, it can easily accelerate towards oblivion. Now, before we get too gloomy and downhearted, there is very good reason to be optimistic about the future. Freemasonry is attracting increasing interest among young professional men, and many lodges have been very successful in bringing in new members. Perhaps more importantly, some have also been very good at retaining them. So what are these thriving lodges doing, and what can the rest of us learn from them? One of the most widely read self-help and management books of the late 20th century was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Covey observed and studied the patterns of behavior most common in people who were, in his observations, happy, successful, and effective in life. So here is my very personal attempt to do the same with respect to lodges. My first of the 7 habits is great ritual and ceremonial. Now, brethren, all the meaning of Freemasonry, its core, is in the ritual. Everything else, our rules, our ranks, and our routines, just wrap around the ritual and the lessons it contains. Well-delivered ritual allows its meaning to be communicated and interpreted. It helps us to gain the personal insights that are so important for our understanding and our Masonic and personal growth. Ritual delivered in a meaningful manner is most appreciated by the candidate. If it flows well, with supportive rather than zealous prompting where necessary, it's likely to leave a lasting impression. Such ceremonial work sets standards that new members aspire to emulate, and it attracts visitors to the lodge. In contrast, slow, faltering, or hesitant ceremonial, delivered with multiple and intrusive prompts, becomes uncomfortable for those doing the work and embarrassing for those on whom it's been inflicted. Now, by well-delivered ritual, I don't mean perfect ritual. We're not Shakespearean actors, or at least most of us are not. And while some brethren can achieve word-perfect delivery, any requirement that all of us should do so would create unreasonable expectations and all the stress and loss of confidence that these can often bring. Such a requirement might even turn our attention away from the meaning. The delivery of ritual is intended to communicate meaning to a candidate and to stimulate his search for further meaning. It's intended to be instruction, not a theatrical performance. So, of course, achieving a high standard of work requires the commitment of senior officers, thorough preparation by the Director of Ceremonies, and a willingness by everyone to do their best. It helps if the, excuse me, it helps if the officers can develop a team spirit. Newer members will need help and encouragement to learn the ritual, and rehearsals or lodges of instruction will need to be held at regular intervals, preferably in a friendly and supportive environment. The rewards are evident. Lodges that achieve such standards of ritual and ceremonial and which foster teamwork do succeed in attracting members who are willing to put in the effort. So what's my second habit of highly successful lodges? It's efficient administration. For some years, United Grand Lodge has encouraged lodges to streamline the administrative elements of lodge meetings. Now, these elements are important, but they're not the reason we meet. 200 years ago, the best way of communicating with members was orally at meetings. The need for that went out with the Bander machine, the spirit duplicator, invented in 1923. Today, technology affords us much more effective methods of keeping people informed. If you took away all of the ceremonial from our lodges, just for a second and put it to one side, you would be left with a Victorian committee meeting. And no other organisation that I can think of still runs its business meetings in such a time-consuming manner. Working Masons do not give their leisure time to hear repetitive minutes read aloud in a monotonic voice, or to take part in lengthy and protracted administrative processes, or to witness bumbling secretaries shuffle papers and read all communications. All of this can detract from the enjoyment of an otherwise good lodge meeting. Yes, administrative elements of lodge meetings are clearly a necessary formality, but they can be undertaken in a slick and efficient manner to occupy minimal lodge time and to help keep the focus on the core of Freemasonry. All that is needed is the proper use of technology and some advanced preparation by the lodge secretary and others. The imminent arrival of United Grand Lodge's Hermes system is set to take much of the lodge's administrative work online and make the job of the hardworking secretary easier. If secretaries can use this opportunity to improve the prior planning and organisation of lodge meetings, we can expect to see less meeting time consumed by administration and more time given to labour and refreshment, that is, to ceremony, ritual, and social intercourse. So that brings me to my third habit of highly successful lodges, and that is active support for new members. The lifestyle and cultural experiences of men joining the craft today is very different from those in even the recent past. Men have far more leisure options, are expected to do more in the home, and are more answerable to their families as to how they spend their time and money. They're also less deferential and much less likely to comply with the instructions or expectations of their social or Masonic elders without questioning or understanding why. So the net effect is that if they do not enjoy their Freemasonry, if it lacks meaning for them, or if they're not involved, they may well decide to leave. Nationally, 1 in every 5 new members resigns before being presented with his Grand Lodge certificate. And many of these brethren cite these very reasons. Rarely do they explain this to their lodge, however. Many just prefer to say something such as their own circumstances had changed. Now, Masonic mentoring is about providing active support for new members to help them to make sense of the craft, to learn about its symbols, teaching, and customs. It is more than the passive or reactive approach of being friendly and available. It has to be planned and organised. Now, this involves time on the part of the member and their personal mentor, whose role it is to provide the new member with the information, contact, and personal support that he wants, not what the lodge thinks that he should have. So the member's pathway now provides us with a structure, a process, and guidance for this planned mentoring. So there's no longer any reason to leave this essential support for our new members to chance. By welcoming, befriending, and nurturing the newer members, the very brethren who will lead Freemasonry in the future, we can provide good membership experiences, keep their interest, and foster their commitment. So my fourth habit is involvement of all members. In a more deferential age, members may have been happy to wait until they were senior enough to have an active role in the lodge. Many members joining today take the view that their voice should be heard and their talents used, and they consider that their membership fee entitles it to be so. Some lodges now open lodge committee meetings to all members, even if not all attendees have full voting rights. Others involve newer members and their partners in organising social events. The latter has the advantage of using a wider pool of skills and experiences for the benefit of the lodge. It builds relationships and it attracts potential new members. Once a member has been through the chair, is he still engaged in the work of the lodge? Finding a role for every past master is a means of keeping them engaged and maintaining their attendance. It doesn't have to be a collared office, it just has to be something that uses the past master's skills and suits his interest and commitment. Passing on key offices to recent past masters is also a way of keeping the lodge refreshed and ensuring that there are competent people around to run it in the future. I was amazed when visiting one lodge a little while ago to see that none of the past masters who had been installed in the last 10 years had a continuing office in the lodge. Although many of them were still members, very few of them were actually in attendance. Now, how can such a lodge expect to retain the interest and attendance of past masters if they do not feel wanted or involved in some way? How can the lodge expect to have a future if it does not pass on offices to newer members while there are still others around to support them? Family involvement is increasingly important too, especially in social activities. A lodge that is not family friendly may well be creating clashes for its members' priorities, while brethren whose families support their Masonic involvement are often able to give more time to their lodge. Creating opportunities for partners and families to be involved also builds their support for Freemasonry and gives them an insight into its relevance and meaning. So my fifth habit of highly successful lodges is a willingness to evolve and change. The history of Freemasonry has been that of evolution and change, despite what some brethren may tell you. Evolution allows organisations, and that includes lodges, to stay fresh, attractive and relevant. Many of our most ancient and traditional organisations, and I include here the monarchy, the City of London and our oldest universities, recognise that they must evolve what they do internally to synchronise or mesh with what is happening in the outside world. Otherwise, they end up disconnected, irrelevant and unable to engage, support or attract and retain members. Over the years, many lodges have moved away from their founding purpose or origins. For example, many lodges established to serve particular communities have converged into larger Masonic centres. Other lodges have found that the shared interest they served, such as a school, a regiment or a hobby, no longer exists or has fallen in popularity. Unless such lodges evolve to offer something new and distinctive, they become just another lodge, little different from anything else. It's far more difficult to attract new members into such lodges. On the other hand, lodges that do evolve, that find some unique feature, that occupy a niche or associate with another organisation, can often continue to attract new members. Unique features might include special lodge traditions or practices. Niche lodges include those that meet in the daytime to attract those who are unwilling or unable to go out in the evenings. Affinity lodges cater for members with a shared interest, such as a particular school, a university, or a unit of the armed services, scouting, round table, historic reenactors, and so on. Step 1 of the members' pathway encourages lodges to prepare a development plan, to identify where its future members will come from and how its meetings and practices will attract and hold that membership. This process helps a lodge to evolve, to refresh, to identify specific groups of potential members, and to build relationships with affinity bodies. So, step 6, I wonder what it is. It's harmony. Our ritual teaches us to build and maintain harmony. It's one of the things that sets us apart from other organisations. Harmony binds a lodge together and provides a foundation upon which Masonic teaching can come alive. But equally, nothing destroys a lodge like disharmony. New members will soon leave a lodge that is not practicing its principles of harmonious working. The senior members of a lodge have a particular responsibility to ensure that harmony is maintained. One issue that can threaten harmony is the disenfranchisement of newer members from lodge decision-making. When decisions are made by a select few, the other members often feel that their membership is undervalued. And in our less deferential age, members are less likely to accept such a situation. They're likely either to challenge it or quietly leave, sometimes without explaining why. In my opinion, and it's only my opinion, it's no longer acceptable that senior members reserve decisions to themselves. As a lodge secretary, I always used to tell the incoming master that leadership and the harmony of the lodge were his first priorities and the key to its future success for his year and beyond. Consultation and brotherly love are essential for harmony to exist. Now, by consultation, I mean keeping members informed of issues, consulting them on contentious matters, exercising caution with respect to decisions. In this way, everyone has the chance to have their say, to be heard, and to work happily and willingly for the collective good. Brotherly love is built by being together, by labour and refreshment, a balance of Masonic and social activities, by supporting each other and by always considering the best interests of the whole. But it's destroyed when cliques and factions take over, whether they're based on seniority, other interests, or when differences of opinion arise. Harmony can be threatened by little things and should not be taken for granted. It has to be valued, worked at, and constantly refreshed. My final habit, the 7th habit of highly successful lodges, is leadership from the chair. Every master will want and deserves his year to be special. The annual cycle of a new master, supported by stable but renewing administrative and ceremonial teams, balances the fresh approaches of the new with continuity from the past. Wise masters provide leadership, leaving others to manage the details of the lodge. And to clarify, I would suggest that the difference between leadership and management is that leadership is about communicating a way forward in such a manner that others will willingly follow, while management is about the organisation and disciplines needed to ensure things get done in a timely and correct manner. So, an incoming master who tells the lodge that he wants an enjoyable year in which all members will be able to take part, with a programme of ceremonial and social events, will often provide new impetus to a lodge. If he shows enthusiasm, involves and values his members, and builds a team approach to lodge work, he's likely to gain their loyal and enthusiastic commitment in return. But great leaders need good managers working alongside them. And the managers in the lodge are the heads of the administrative team, the ceremonial team, and the care team. That is the secretary, director of ceremonies, and either the almoner or mentor. These officers will have others to support them, and they need to work together so that the leader, the current master, can shine. Brethren, these are my 7 habits of highly successful lodges. Now, none of them are new, and none of them should come as a surprise. They're just collectively my personal top 7, based upon my own observations. However, if your lodge is struggling, the list might well help you think afresh about your own way forward. And as guardians and stewards of our lodges, I think we have a twofold responsibility to future generations. The first is to protect and preserve the core of Freemasonry. That is the meaning that we're taught in the ritual, so that Freemasonry itself continues to exist and to be a force for good in the world. The second is to do all we can to pass on to our successors a lodge that is fit for the future, well suited to our current and likely future circumstances. And we can do this by evolving and adapting the things we wrap around the core to suit our changing circumstances. By this I mean things such as our administration, our festive boards, our lodge committees, social events, and our support for our new members. Successful lodges have always made such adaptations, and this is the reason so many of them have survived, some for over 300 years. But failure to evolve and change is also the reason why 1/3 of all lodges have closed in the last 200 years. So if you want to explore in more detail the issue of evolution and change in Freemasonry, you might want to think about inviting me back to deliver another of my talks on that very subject. But if your lodge is struggling or is in decline, now is the time to act. And my best advice is to adopt and follow the members' pathway. And Jeremy has already mentioned this, and I should pay tribute to your past Provincial Grand Master, Peter Taylor, who had so much to do with this work, and to whom a lot of the credit goes for the development of the pathway and its establishment and adoption by United Grand Lodge. As lodges, to adopt the members' pathway, we need to start at step 1. Step 1 takes you through a review of your lodge and its practices to agree a lodge plan. You can then follow the other steps to attract, introduce, and retain new members. My other piece of advice is to engage the support of your provincial membership officer. He and his team have experience in these matters, and they can guide you through the process. The members' pathway can be found online at this link, b.ugle.org.uk/membership. And if you haven't looked at it recently, brethren, I do urge you to do so, because it's had a makeover. It's the same material, just presented in a slightly different way. And I will put the link to that site into the chat area shortly. Brethren, I'd like to leave you with these thoughts. If you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always got. And if what you're doing is not working, do something different. So I wish you well, brethren, Many lodges have trod this path before, and many have shown that with vision, energy, and commitment, they can revive their fortunes. And the help you might need is now available. So the future of your lodge is very much in your hands. Thank you again for your attention and interest. You've shown in my personal top 7 habits of highly successful lodges, and I'm now very happy to be questioned and, who knows, quite possibly challenged.